is to stand your ground, even if it meant disappointing the people you love. When the text finally came, asking what the plan was for the holiday, I took a deep breath and replied, "Let's talk. We need to figure out a new plan, together." So here I am, caught between the desire to please my family and the need to protect my own well-being. Enough for refusing to host family gatherings anymore. For wanting to share the load, to reclaim our time and our space. It's a difficult position to be in, and I never thought it would come to this. He said the obvious. They're not listening. I sighed and sank down on the couch next to him. I know I have no idea what to do next. These people are sure that since we don't have kids, we should be the hosts. They act like they don't value our time and effort. He pulled me close by putting his arm around me. He said that we could just refuse and say no. I thought about doing it, but I knew that it would only make things worse and cause more fights. My family was set in their ways and wouldn't give up quickly. Part of me was also scared of what would happen if they really did get mad at me. What if it made things worse between us? After a moment, I said, "I think I have a better idea." Then thought was being formed in my mind. It's fine if they want to come over for Thanksgiving, but I'm not going to cook anything. They can take care of everything else if they want to use our house. He raised an eyebrow, showing that he was interested. Are you sure about that? They might not like it. I told them, I'm sure, because I was getting more determined. That person needs to understand that hosting is more than just having a big house. It takes a lot of work. See what it's like to show up without anything planned. They might finally get it. That was the plan, then. I'd host Thanksgiving, but I wouldn't do a thing to get it ready. There's no need to clean, cook, or set the table. I knew it was dangerous, but I thought it was the only way to get my point across. They thought hosting was easy, but I had to show them that it wasn't. In the days before Thanksgiving, there was a strange mix of excitement and worry. In their texts, my family kept asking if I needed help with anything, or if I had planned the menu yet. Each time I tried to avoid answering their questions by giving them vague or non-committal comments. It was clear that they thought everything would go on as usual, a fancy feast and a beautifully decorated home, and everything else that made our get-togethers so wonderful. But I wouldn't move. I didn't want to get stuck in the same old habits. They were going to learn what it's like to not need something this year. There was no fear in my heart when I woke up on Thanksgiving morning for the first time in years. There was no rush to put the turkey in the oven, make the side foods, or worry about how to set the table perfectly. Somehow I felt calm. Since I had already done what I said I would do, I had no reason to do anything else. The morning. My partner and I just hung out at home and enjoyed the peace and quiet. We had a simple meal, watched TV, and even went for a walk. It was almost surreal. We got a taste of what a really peaceful vacation might be like. When my family showed up in the early afternoon, I could tell they were confused by the look on their faces. They came in. It was not the warm, welcome smell of Thanksgiving dinner that they were expecting to find when they walked in. Nothing. There were no dishes in sight, the kitchen was quiet, and the dining room table was empty. "Where is the food, please?" He looked around as if he had missed something obvious and asked. No changes were made to what I said. I just shrugged. He looked at me like he was waiting for the joke. "What do you mean you didn't make anything?" "I know," I said, trying to keep my tone as calm as possible. "It's Thanksgiving. I told you I needed a break, though. I didn't cook then." The rest of my family started to understand as they looked at the scene. My mom looked really upset. She kept looking around the room like she was trying to figure out what went wrong. Her voice was tinged with doubt. "You didn't make anything." I shook my head and said, "Nope, what I said was true. It's okay if you all want to use our house. I'm not cooking this year, though." Yes, I did need a break. As they thought about what I had just said, there was a stunned quiet. My brother and my cousin looked at each other, and I could tell that he was getting more and more angry. "After this, what should we do?" he asked, his angry tone rising in the voice. "We don't have any food or anything. What should we do for Thanksgiving?" It felt like the stress in the room was rising, but I wouldn't give up. I crossed my arms and said, "I don't know, you'll figure something out, though. You can go to the food store across the street or order takeout if you need to get some things. Do what makes sense for you." It looked like my mom was about to cry. It was clear that the situation was too much for me. She said, "I can't believe this," and shook her head. "This isn't like you. You've always been the one who brought us all together." I felt bad about what she said, but I pushed it aside. I knew that things would never change if I gave up now. My family needed to understand that they couldn't keep expecting me to take on all the work without thinking about how it made me feel. I had to do this, even though my voice was getting a little softer. It was important for you all to see what it's like when I'm not in charge of everything. My family held a long, awkward pose while they thought about what I said. Finally, my brother let out a frustrated sigh. "That's fine," he said, clearly mad. "Let's get something to eat. We'll figure it out." As my family got into their cars and drove to the store, the next hour was a chaotic mess. They came back with bags of ready-made meals, roasted chickens, and anything else they could find so quickly. It wasn't nearly as fancy as our regular spread, but it was better than nothing. I stood outside and felt a strange mix of happiness and sadness as they hurried to get everything together. Many parts of me were glad that I finally spoke out. I felt guilty that I made them experience what it was like to be in their shoes, but I also felt a deep sense of loss. This wasn't the Thanksgiving I had imagined, and it wasn't the holiday I wanted for my family. We all sat down to eat when everything was ready. It was tense, and there was a lot of unsaid anger in the air. The food was fine, but it didn't have the care and warmth that our meals normally have. My family ate in mostly silence, as if they were still thinking about what had happened. My mom grabbed me by the arm as we cleaned up after dinner. She looked tired, and her face showed a mix of sadness and worry. She said in a soft voice, "I'm sorry I had no idea that we were putting so much stress on you. Our lives are so used to having you take care of everything. I guess we didn't think much of it." When she spoke, I felt a lump form in my throat, but I was able to control my feelings. I told her, I know I could no longer do everything by myself though. You all needed to see that she nodded, and her eyes showed a mix of regret and understanding. "We'll figure something out for next time," she said. "But I hope you won't do this again next time." "It was hard on everyone. Next time we need to have a real conversation about how we're going to handle these gatherings," I said with a firm voice. "We all need to take care of things if we want to keep celebrating together. If not, I will not host again. Not like this." She looked at me for a long moment, as if searching for something in my expression. Finally, she sighed and gave a small nod. "Okay," she said quietly. "We'll talk about it." As we finished cleaning up and everyone started to leave, I felt a strange sense of relief wash over me. It hadn't been the perfect solution, but it was a start. My family had been forced to confront the reality of what hosting meant, and while they hadn't fully accepted it yet, I knew that I had made my point. The next few weeks were filled with a strange tension. My family was clearly still processing what had happened, and I could sense that they were trying to figure out how to move forward. I received a few messages here and there, tentative offers to host future gatherings or suggestions to meet at a neutral location. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. As the next holiday approached, I braced myself for the inevitable conversation. I knew my family would be looking to me for answers, for guidance on what to do next, but this time I was ready. I had learned that sometimes in order to make a change, you had to be willing, instead of love or understanding. "Are you kidding me?" My brother laughed and shook his head. "Each of us has a bigger house than you do. It is great for a vacation with family. What does a little work look like next to that?" "Yes. And you're really good at it." My cousin added something with a smile. "When you host, everything always goes so well. We're all excited about it." My heart sank. They weren't paying attention to me. Some people thought I was lying or making a big deal out of nothing. I looked at my partner and got a comforting nod. He or she was telling me to stand my ground without saying a word. I urged, my voice getting stronger, "It's not just a little work. It takes a lot of work. Not only does it take time and work, but it also costs money. These get-togethers have cost us hundreds or even thousands of bucks. We love having you all over, but we need a break. It would be too much to do this for every holiday and birthday." There was that awkward quiet again. The look of confusion turned to annoyance on their faces, as if they didn't understand why I was making this a problem. My mom finally spoke up. She was less happy and more serious in her tone. "I know it's a lot of work, honey, but we're family. We help each other out. It's easier for you because you and your partner don't have kids. You should know that the rest of us have our own problems." I got angry at her words all of a sudden. Even though we don't have kids, our time and energy were still very important. However, that didn't mean we could be the hosts of every event. I could see where this was going, though. They were set on believing that our situation made us the best people to host, and they weren't going to easily change their minds. I tried to keep my voice calm as I said, "I know. Everyone has their own problems, but that doesn't mean we can do this by ourselves. That's why I think we should switch who hosts. That way, no one has to carry the whole load by themselves. Otherwise, if that's too hard, we could get together at a restaurant or a third-party place. That way, we can still be together without making one family deal with a lot of stress." My brother laughed. "We all know it's easier where you are. You have the room, the kitchen, and everything set up. Keep things simple if you don't have to." "Oh, and going out to eat isn't the same," my cousin said. "The way it feels is different. It's not as personal, you know." I began to feel like I was hitting my head against a wall. I tried to explain it to them many times, but they wouldn't view things my way. It seemed like they were set on the idea that hosting was my job, and that any effort to change that was just me being difficult. After that talk, There was a lot of stress in the air. However, my family made it clear that they didn't like the idea of taking turns serving, even though I tried to explain how busy we were. They still didn't seem to fully understand how much work went into planning every holiday and event. Both my mind and heart were worn out, and I knew my partner felt the same way. Still, I knew they weren't going to let this go after everything. The expectation that wasn't said hung over us like a dark cloud, heavy and suffocating. A few days later, I got proof that I had been draining. A group text from my mom telling everyone that the next holiday party, on Thanksgiving no less, would be at our house. When I read the message, my heart sunk. I felt a mix of anger and resignation in my chest. The message said, "We've all talked it over. We also think you should have Thanksgiving at your house. I promise that this time we'll all help out more. We're excited to be with each other." The words hurt more than they should have. Even though we didn't always agree, I loved my family very much and wanted to be with them. But I felt like they weren't listening to anything I had to say. It felt like my worries and limits had been brushed off, like they were just a minor bothersomeness. My partner read the message with a frown on his face after I showed it to him. "Because I'm sick of always having to pay for the whole family, I'm not going to family meetings." It felt like all our hard work had finally paid off when my partner and I walked into the house that would soon be ours. We had carefully planned, saved, and budgeted for years to get to this point. There it was, a beautiful 3-bedroom house with a huge kitchen, a living room that seemed to go on forever, and a garden that seemed to go on forever. It was the kind of place that begged to be full of life, friends, and fun. We had always dreamed of a place like this where we could get together with our families, hold events, and maybe even start new customs. Our home was ours to shape and make whatever life we wanted inside its walls, since we don't have kids and don't plan to. I used to work as a bartender, and I've always loved having people over. Something about getting people together and making the right meal or drink makes me happy. So, last year, when Thanksgiving came around, it made sense for me to offer to host. I wanted it to be different because it was the first big holiday in our new house. I imagined my family gathering around the table. The house smelled like turkey and pies that had just been baked, and I could hear laughter and glasses clinking through the halls. It was the right idea, and I was determined to make it happen. When the day came, our house was turned into a warm and welcoming haven. In the middle of juggling several items, I made sure that everything would be ready in time for dinner. The kitchen was a lively place. There were cozy chairs set up in the living room, and I even made a small bar area where I could serve drinks to our guests. When I set the table, I used our nicest plates and put together a beautiful arrangement of fall flowers as the centerpiece. It was getting more and more exciting as our family started to show up. They were amazed by the house and told us how well we had decorated it and made it our own. As freely as the wine and cocktails, so did the praise. I felt like I was back in my old role as a bartender, making drinks with style and making sure everyone was taken care of. The dinner went well, the food was tasty, and the talk was lively. People laughed and told stories. And there was a clear sense of community that makes holidays like Thanksgiving so special. I felt very satisfied by the end of the night, when the last of our friends left and the house became quiet. It was even better than I had hoped to host Thanksgiving. Putting in a lot of work paid off when I saw how happy everyone was and knew I had given my family a great experience. Yes, I was tired. But I was tired in a good way, like after a long day of work. But as the weeks turned into months, I saw that Thanksgiving had meant something different. Since Christmas was coming up, my family naturally thought that we would host again. Our house was a great place to get together, and we had already shown that we could handle it. As long as the first Christmas was another chance to get everyone together, I didn't mind. I was still feeling good about hosting after Thanksgiving. So, we got right to work on the plans again. Thanksgiving was already very fancy, but Christmas was even more so. It was time to buy and wrap gifts, decorate the tree, and make plans for an even bigger meal. It took me days to bake cookies, make candy, and plan a feast so good that even Santa would be envious. Our home was once again filled with the love and joy of the season when we had a dinner on Christmas Eve and a brunch on Christmas Day. Things changed after Christmas, though. In February, it was my mom's birthday, and once again we had the party at our house. This time I had a little bit of hesitation. It was getting hard for me because we had just had 2 big holidays in a row. I pushed those feelings away, though, and got busy planning her birthday party. Even though it was a small get-together, it still took a lot of work to prepare, cook, and clean up. I was worn out by the end of her birthday party. As the year went on, it became clear that our house had become the standard place for all family get-togethers. Every holiday, birthday, and family event took place at our house, including Easter, Memorial Day, and the 4th of July, and the load got heavier with each meeting. It took a lot of time and energy to plan, cook, and clean up after these parties. It also cost a lot of money. It cost a lot to host. We spent hundreds or even thousands of dollars on food, drinks, and decorations, and then we had to hire cleaners to clean up afterward because we couldn't handle the mess ourselves. Some family members would help out once in a while, but my partner and I were always the ones who had to do most of the work. I was always on my toes, making sure everything ran smoothly, while everyone else got to rest and enjoy the events. I was the one who got up early to start getting ready, and the last one to go to bed once the house was quiet and all the dishes were clean. My partner helped out when he could, but I could tell he was getting tired too. These events took up all of our weekends, leaving us with little time to relax, enjoy our own space, and do the things we loved. We were also feeling the weight of the cash load. Even though we both make good money, we don't want to spend a lot of it on hosting. When we save for retirement, we have our own plans and goals. Going on trips, maybe even starting a small business on the side, and spending so much money on these events felt like it was taking away from our resources. It was the time more than anything else. Families were getting together all the time, taking up time we could have spent together visiting new places, trying new things, or just relaxing at home on the weekend. The last straw was when Thanksgiving came around again this year. That holiday from last year was still fresh in my mind, the fun, the happiness, and the pleasure. However, I didn't feel excited to host this time. I felt very scared. I was no longer able to do it this way. We didn't want to go through all that trouble again, planning, cooking, and cleaning for weeks, only to have another family meeting in our home and chaos take over. I chose to talk to them about it one Sunday afternoon. During a live call with family, we would always check in with each other on the weekends to talk about life and make plans for the coming week. My mom, my siblings, and a few friends were all there, laughing and chatting with us as we planned Thanksgiving. "That means we'll be back at your place, right?" To make it sound like it was a given, my mom asked in a light, conversational voice. I took a deep breath to prepare for what I was going to say. I began, my voice a little shaky. In fact, I wanted to talk to you all about that. Many people have come to our house for Thanksgiving. Christmas, Mom's birthday, Easter, Memorial Day, and the 4th of July this past year. Although having everyone over has been great, it's getting a bit much for us. At the other end of the line, there was a pause and a short silence. My words hung in the air. I could see the puzzled looks on their faces and the small furrows in their brows as they thought about what I was saying. "What do you mean?" My mom finally asked, but her voice was a little off. I tried to keep my tone cool, and even as I said, "I mean, it's a lot of work to host all these events. Things like planning, cooking, and cleaning are getting really hard on us. It also puts a lot of stress on the finances. A lot of money is going to be spent on food, drinks, and decorating. Then we have to pay someone to clean up because it's too much for us to do ourselves." I took a moment to wait for them to understand and see where I was coming from. What I got, though, was laughter.